谢里夫总理出席上海合作峰会。
We shall not waste a moment to further cement our friendship, our brotherhood. It is easier said than done, but Chinese model we have to emulate, and with your support, and we want to work hard, and we want to stand on our feet one day soon with your support.
中巴伙伴关系是时候更上一层楼了。2022年11月，总理访华，下一代的未来就在此刻。习近平主席第3次当选中共中央总书记。巴基斯坦总理代表巴基斯坦全国人民祝贺习近平主席第3次当选中共中央总书记，向他英明的领导能力和为中国人民服务的
High in the western Himalayas, cradled in the Karakoram mountains of northern Pakistan, lies a plateau known as the Land of Giants. The Deosai Plateau in Gilgit-Baltistan is the second highest plateau in the world. The Deosai National Park was created here in 1993, and it is home to the endangered Himalayan brown bear. This is the sole habitat in the whole of South Asia that can claim an increasing bear population. In 1993, the situation was very different.
In the early years, there were a lot of difficulties in Deosai in terms of conservation.
The Himalayan Wildlife Foundation recognized that the very survival of the bears in Deosai was at risk and decided to act. They gathered international funding and set up a field camp, conducting vital research on all aspects of the bears and their habitat.
We counted the bears, and all we could find were 17 bears. Compared to what we had heard from the wildlife department, there were 500. We were really worried that maybe there were 500 bears once upon a time, and maybe this is all that is left. So we have to do something.
The Himalayan Wildlife Foundation worked with local communities to foster conservation awareness and also recruited park staff from here. Training the local people in park management gave them a vested interest in the future welfare of the park.
We left in 2002-03. We handed it over to the department. The basic systems were in place. There was a level of protection, and the department got its staff in place with its own funding.
By 2007, the population of brown bears in the park had grown significantly, 43 of these fascinating creatures were now living in the Deosai Plateau. Sadly, the fate of the bears and their survival is by no means assured as yet. The care of the
Hello, you're watching PTV World News. This is Mohammed Abdullah Dar with the top stories of this hour. As world leaders gather at the UN Climate Change Conference, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also leaves for Egypt to co-chair the conference that begins tomorrow at Red Sea Resort Sharm el-Sheikh. The UN's COP27 climate summit kicks off in Egypt with warnings against backsliding on efforts to cut emissions and calls for rich nations to compensate poor countries after a year of extreme weather disasters. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says he will urge the world as chair of G77 to deliver on its commitment on climate finance and loss and damage fund. Says without financial support, the developing countries would continue to remain exposed to the multifarious designs of climate change. Pakistan will lead push for compensation to developing countries suffering from climate change at the United Nations Climate Summit in Egypt. Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Munir Akram, says that this is a matter of climate justice to the developing countries that are suffering from impacts of policies of industrialized countries over the past 150 years. Imran Khan wants registration of a false and illegal first information report in the Wazirabad firing incident. Information Minister Maryam Aurangzeb says that PTI chief, who is a foreign-funded fitna, had been pressurizing the Punjab administration as well as police for this purpose. Chairman Senate Sadiq Sanjrani constitutes a special committee to inquire into the alleged video of Senator Azam Khan Swati. The special committee will elect the convener from members of the committee during the first meeting and would present its report within 30 days after the maiden meeting. Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control and across the world are observing Jammu Martyrs Day today to reiterate their resolve to carry on the martyrs' mission till they achieve their inalienable right to self-determination. Pakistan beat Bangladesh by 5 wickets to reach the T20 World Cup semi-finals. The President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif congratulates Pakistan team on the success and wish them good luck. The Netherlands pulled off a shock 13-run win to send South Africa crashing out of the ICC T20 World Cup 2022 in Adelaide. Meanwhile, India outplayed Zimbabwe by 71 runs in Melbourne. Pakistan will face the New Zealand in the first semi-final of the ICC T20 World Cup on Wednesday in Sydney, while India will take on England on the second semi-final on Thursday in Adelaide. PTV Sports HD is telecasting the entire event live. And rain occurs in upper parts of the country as Mud Office predicts more rain with snow over hilly areas till tomorrow. Hailstorm is also likely to occur at isolated places in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Upper Punjab. Well, that's all from my side and the entire news team of PTV World. For the details and live streaming, do log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. It's goodbye for now.
国，命运共同体。中巴友谊比山高，比海深，比蜜甜。铁杆兄弟之间的伙伴关系，建立在70年的友谊之上。在习近平主席“一带一路”倡议下，中巴经济走廊建设步入高潮，改变着人民的命运。在首席部长夏巴兹谢里夫的领导下，取得了历史性成就。撒希瓦尔燃煤电站项目、巴哈瓦尔布尔太阳能光伏电站、拉合尔轨道交通城线列车首次运行。巴基斯坦首列全面计划地铁列车获得了夏巴兹氏长遮普氏族称号。作为总理，带领巴基斯坦经济复苏，与中巴经济走廊复兴。时隔4年首次召开联合合作委员会会议，下一阶段建设包括工业、铁路、公路和自然基础设施，建设瓜达尔港为下一个贸易和转运中心。习近平主席邀请夏巴兹谢里夫总理出席上海合作峰会。
We shall not waste a moment to further cement our friendship, our brotherhood. It is easier said than done, but Chinese model we have to emulate, and with your support, and we want to work hard, and we want to stand on our feet one day soon with your support.
中巴伙伴关系是时候更上一层楼了。2022年11月，总理访华，下一代的未来就在此刻。习近平主席第3次当选中共中央总书记，巴基斯坦总理代表巴基斯坦全国人民祝贺习近平主席第3次当选中共中央总书记，向他英明的领导能力和为中国人民服务的
full toss, it might be a no ball, but it's caught. Afridi fittingly hits the winning run. Shahid Afridi, big man, big game, it's a leg by, who cares? Handshakes all round, it's been a wonderful tournament, a fantastic tournament, and it's Pakistan, and yes, you might say fittingly win this 2020 World Cup.
on air.
Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to your continued support as we transition to the more daunting phase of rehabilitation and reconstruction. And let me assure you, we are determined and we are committed by the grace of God that we will emerge stronger from these floods, and we shall, inshallah, bounce back in a very short period of time.
के लिए आगे आए। अभी फंड लिखकर 9999 पर SMS करें और 10 रुपए अतिया करें या अपने अतियात वज़ीर-ए-आज़म फ्लड रिलीफ फंड अकाउंट में जमा कराएं। हुकूमत पाकिस्तान।
हालिया बारिशों ने मुल्क में 30 साला रिकॉर्ड तोड़ दिया है और अब तक लाखों अफराद सैलाब से मुतासिर हो चुके हैं। ये मासूम बच्चे, ये बेबस बहनें, ये भाई और ये बुजुर्ग आपकी फराख दिलाना इमदाद के मुंतजिर हैं। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म पाकिस्तान मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ के सैलाब जदगान के लिए माली इमदाद की अपील। आप भी स्पेशल अकाउंट G12164 में दिल खोलकर इमदाद दें और अपने हमवतनों के जख्मों पर मरहम रखें। बैरून मुल्क मुकीम पाकिस्तानी वायर ट्रांसफर, मनी सर्विस ब्यूरो, मनी ट्रांसफर ऑपरेटर्स और एक्सचेंज हाउसेस के जरिए अतियात भिजवा सकते हैं। अंदरूनी मुल्क कमर्शियल बैंकों में भी नकद अतियात जमा करवाए जा सकते हैं।
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Prime Minister's visit as he embarks today to attend the COP27 conference. Of course, it potentially has huge ramifications for the kind of climate damage that Pakistan has suffered. The concept of climate reparation, which has been something that has been on the agenda for Pakistan, for the government of Pakistan, for the Prime Minister, particularly since Pakistan has been submerged, 1/3 of Pakistan has been submerged in water, the kind of suffering that we've seen, the phase of rehabilitation that we talk about, all of those things remain clearly on the agenda as far as the government is concerned. And the Prime Minister has gone to co-chair this conference and talk about potentially the concept of reparation for countries who have been dealt with the most damage and who sadly are unable to do anything about it. We'll be talking about this. We'll be talking about what this conference can mean for countries like Pakistan. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me, before we go to the guests, we'll be going to see a package on what we can expect from the Prime Minister as he co-chairs this conference and what it can mean for Pakistan.
Pakistan's foreign policy under the guidance of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and an enlightened and assertive approach of Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is accumulating consistent successes at the international forums, specifically in terms of presenting the case of Pakistan, which has faced devastating and disastrous effects of climate change in the form of unprecedented and catastrophic floods recently. In this realm, Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari at various international platforms seeks climate justice for Pakistan. Being a co-stakeholder in this climate change dilemma, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has left for Egypt to participate in the significant Sharm el-Sheikh Climate Implementation Summit, which is being held on November 7th and 8th as a part of 27th United Nations Climate Change Conference. At the invitation of Egyptian Presidency of COP27, the Prime Minister would also co-chair, along with his Norwegian counterpart, a high-level roundtable discussion on climate change and the sustainability of vulnerable communities. Moreover, Prime Minister will also participate in other high-level events as a speaker, including the United Nations Secretary General's roundtable to launch the Early Warning Systems for Execution Action Plan and the Middle East Green Initiative Summit. COP27 summit, and Pakistan's representation is quite significant as millions of people in Pakistan and millions more in other parts of the world are facing adverse impacts of climate change. While expressing the solidarity with Pakistan and recognizing the nation's plight, United Nations World Food Programme has called on the international community and world leaders which are gathered at COP27 to invest in building the resilience of vulnerable communities living on the front lines of the climate crisis in Pakistan and other climate hotspots. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on Sunday said that he would urge the world as chair of G77 to deliver on its commitment on climate finance and loss and damage fund.
Right, welcome back. We have with us Munir Ahmed, who is a geopolitical analyst. Thank you for joining us today. We also have with us Pastor Amar Khusnood, who is a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us. And Dr. Jamil Khan, who is a former ambassador. Thank you for joining us today. Munir Sahab, we've been talking about the effects of climate damage to Pakistan for a while now. We've also talked about the floods and the kind of havoc that they've wreaked in Pakistan. How do you look at overall this conference, and what do you think in terms of what it can achieve? What are the achievables and the significance of the Prime Minister co-chairing it?
Yeah, three questions. A combo of three questions. First of all, I believe it's a great journey from Paris Agreement to this conference, COP27. And we have, the world has taken several good steps that could help least developed countries and developing countries to, combat, to adapt and to mitigate the impact of climate change. But that is really unfortunate that the developed world, as they promised to contribute 100 billion annually into a green climate fund, they could not, rather they did not fulfill their promise. And that is the shortfall of the Paris Agreement, and that is continuing. This conference certainly will be focusing and stressing on the developed world to contribute the required funds and help least developed world. And
like we were earlier talking about, this is nearly 200 countries, and overall the impact of them getting together, the focus seems to be that to make countries who have that kind of power, who have that kind of resource, actually accountable to less privileged countries, I would have to say, like Pakistan at this time. Let me go to Pastor Amar. I'll come back to you. Pastor, overall, what do you feel is the significance of trying to pin these countries down? Because, of course, they do have access to funds, and the injustice of this, the kind of suffering that we are seeing, particularly in Pakistan and other areas, is something that now cannot be ignored.
Well, the basic reason that we're stressing upon this issue is that recently we've suffered huge losses. About 35 million people have been affected in Pakistan from the recent flood waves. And what we need to achieve from this conference is holding the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases accountable, and not just accountable in the sense of saying it, but accountable in the sense that they pay up for it. And in the previous summit, they kind of avoided going towards this issue of, securing money for countries who were affected from it. So those countries who are producing the most greenhouse gases, they are the most industrialized countries. They need to be held accountable so that they pay those countries which are being affected the most. For example, Pakistan is one of the top 10 countries being affected by it. So if we can achieve funding for losses and damages that we've suffered so far, and for the losses and damages that we will suffer in the future, because this is not a time-bound issue. This is an ongoing issue. We don't know when it finishes, when we will see some change. I was listening to someone today, and the effects that humans have put on this planet you know, it was said that it would probably take 5,000 years, you know, to get them back to where they were. So it is a long-term issue, and the world needs to understand that ignoring this issue will not get us anywhere. We will see more floods, we will see more forest fires, we will see more of these drastic climate issues coming towards us, not just Pakistan, all over the world.
Right, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Abdullah. Abdullah, overall, as far as climate damage is concerned, do you think that this will make a difference? Do you think it's a significant step, of course, in the right direction? But do you think that the fact that this is the primary agenda of the conference and the fact that it will put pressure where it should, you know, indeed, as far as paying up is concerned, as far as reparation is concerned, as far as compensation is concerned, which was the main, you know, focus also during the UNGA address of the Prime Minister?
Of course, I think this is a step in the right direction. Last year it was in Glasgow, and they were actually trying to discuss at the moment is how developed countries are going to pay the developing countries. They want to pay, but there is no specific mechanism for it. There is still no any you say plan for it, how they're going to pay back, but they do actually want to pay back. But more than money, the point is they're getting together to reduce the carbon emissions, the 1.5 degree that must not be there, otherwise that will be the start of the death of the planet. So until 2030 they want to keep it below 1.5 degrees, and until 2050 they want to have the net carbon emission zero, you know. So that's why this agenda and this conference is very important, COP27. That financial climate change, that's another part that we are discussing, and it's not just Pakistan. We're talking about the global climate change and global warming. If we look at the entire continent of Europe this year, we have seen a lot of heat waves. We talk about Africa, there are severe droughts. Pakistan, Australia, and few other countries have suffered from devastating floods. So the first agenda, the main objective of this conference is to how can we reduce and how can we actually make countries to do this, because there is a huge gap between what countries should do and what should have been done now to reduce these carbon dioxide emissions.
Right, I want to go to Dr. Jamil Khan. Ambassador, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Ambassador, in your opinion, we talk about the clout of different countries. We also talk about the resources that they have. In your opinion, what is the biggest impediment to having these countries own up, having them respond? Because there is, of course, this is the COVID, and like we've earlier spoken about, this is a post-COVID world where there is an issue of resources. But then, you know, that there's a mixed opinion on that, and there are people who feel that, you know, the countries that can pay have immense funds to own up. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, in fact, we have to really get the international law invoked, and as it was mentioned a little while ago about the Paris Accord, which happened in 2016, which has all the salient details and features how to go about the climate change and how to really take care of those countries who are least emission countries, like Pakistan and others. So it's a matter of doing the right advocacy. And this very visit of our Prime Minister and our team, they are going in the right direction in terms of advocacy. And once advocacy is done properly, then these 200 countries who have ratified this Paris Accord, climate change accord, they can invoke that agreement and it becomes international law. Now,
when we talk about advocacy, we were earlier talking about the fact that, you know, in terms of how this differentiates this COP20 meeting, how it differentiates from the earlier Paris Agreement, and the fact that sadly we didn't see results emanate from that, will be that, like you said, this will become part of law. and in terms of, there won't be an option but for countries to pay, and whatever the way their international law works in that regard. Do you think, other than you're talking about advocacy, of course, that is one way of putting it, but what are overall, as far as the global situation is concerned now, it's a reality. When we talk about climate change, we talk about the effects of climate change. So this is an area which is developing, new in a lot of ways.
That's right. It's not that new. In fact, it started from Kyoto back in 1997. And then, as I said, that 2016 was this accord. And it was ratified by 200 countries. 2017, United States walked out from. They are the biggest carbon emission country. 40% of the entire world carbon emission is being done by the United States and 29% by the European countries. So this time, they are coming back on the table. John Kerry had said that he would be very happy to have all these points on the table. So the biggest carbon emission country, if they agree, then there are $97 billion, $79.6 billion have already been collected in that, according to the Paris Accord. Although every 100 billion every year was to be collected, but these $79.6 billion which were raised through this international law, through this agreement, what I just indicated, that is to be utilized somewhere. Now, these kind of concepts...
Let me come back to you on that note. I will come back to you. We will talk more about this, but I want to talk about the mechanisms in place. Are they sufficient or not, Munisa? It's also one of those things that will needed to work on. We need to work on during this conference. As I understand, the mechanisms are not in place. Is that true?
Mechanisms are only negotiation.
Okay.
There are different platforms, meetings, and you have to go and negotiate about your terms and conditions. And it depends if the other party accepts your terms and conditions. That is the basic mechanism of the conference of parties. But actually, what the developed countries usually do not agree to what the least developed countries and the developing countries focus on or urge for.
But Munisa, when nearly 200 countries, and like Jamil Saab is saying, he's saying that most of the emissions, a large chunk of them at least, are coming from the US.
Yeah.
So do you think that this, when this kind of a conference happens, it is of course going to put some pressure, or is it something that is taken in stride? What is the overall diplomatically? What is the diplomatic landscape of this, and what is its overall significance in trying to achieve this kind of?
Certainly, this is a forum where you can put pressure on them, but that is quite unfortunate that the large greenhouse gas emission industry or countries, they buy the green credit from least developed countries or the developing countries, whatever the green initiatives they take. But they are not ultimately reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, which is required at the most. And the clean development mechanism and such kind of initiatives, certainly they help developing countries to have more funds, technical and financial support, to adapt the certain measures and techniques and develop their systems to combat climate impact as well. But that is not the solution. If we are talking about net zero by 2050, certainly the big polluters, they have to reduce their carbon emissions.
And also
recently we have seen China doing much better measures. They have also launched their green CPEC initiative, where they are trying to make their initiatives.
As I understand, Denmark and Scotland are some of the minimum contributors.
Yes, they are. The Scandinavian countries are, their contribution is much less. And same is the case with some other countries as well.
But when we talk about contribution, countries, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Amar. Amar, in terms of the contribution that comes, is it, of course, as far as Pakistan is concerned, countries like Pakistan have little to, you know, there may be room, and I think Abdullah will disagree with me on this, as far as what measures Pakistan can take. The point is that, you know, there is, as far as our geostrategic position is concerned, there is some leeway, but not a lot of leeway as to how much, you know, climate damage we suffer.
Maruf, if we look at the steps taken by Pakistan, within our capacity, Pakistan has taken a lot of steps to mitigate the effects of climate change, but we cannot go beyond our sources, and that is where we need funding from the international community and from the biggest emitters of the greenhouse gases, so that we can put that money to good use, to the use where, you know, where we can do more to make these changes. And the other thing which I think we've probably not been able to do is we've not been able to tell the world what we've done for this. We've planted so many trees, the world doesn't know. I mean, there's another thing which we could have done, and we could have actually made money for this. That was the export of carbon credits. We need to build a registry in Pakistan. For that, we need to map our forests. We need to involve communities in it. We need to export those credits to the world. And because we've not done this before, so these will be first-hand virgin credits going into the international market. And I think we can get billions of dollars out of this thing. But someone needs to take this initiative. I believe the Sindh government is going towards it. They're trying to build a registry, but this needs to be done on federal level as well as every other province, because unless everyone gets on board on this issue, we're not getting anywhere. This has to be a coordinated effort. There is a lot of money in the world, which and there is a lot of scope to this. There are a lot of opportunities. We just need to take them.
Right. G. Abdullah, do you agree? You think that, you know, in terms of the steps we can take?
I think there's a lot we have to do and we haven't done yet, which is obviously can be seen with our own naked eyes. For example, our suffering from worse smog every year more and more, which shows that we are not doing our responsibilities. We are not doing what we should have done as a nation, or at least on our provincial level or on our city level. Every year we see that there's so much of burning of those crops for the winter, and there's so much industries which are not being checked by the governments. And the problem is that urbanization on agricultural land, and we are having, we had a billion tree tsunami project, but it was in one part of the country. But if we don't have on the other part, that part is going to suffer. So we're going to start building those houses on agricultural land, and we're going to cut down trees. We're going to have smog and other stuff.
We can talk about, you know, G, I'll come back to you. As far as overall the situation is concerned, with the steps we can take, the measures we can take, of course they are, but I'm sure that there are a chunk of what can be done in terms of what we have to, in terms of reparation or compensation.
Yes.
That has to come from countries that must take ownership.
Yes. That should come, but then the point is, are we going to use it? Are we going to utilize it in the way? That is the one thing, of course, because European Union and its member states are paying $100 billion every year, and globally, let's not just talk about Pakistan or some specific countries. Globally, the entire world needs to cut down 30 gigatons of their carbon emissions by 2030 if we don't want to exceed that level of 1.5 degrees, which is pre-industrial level. So acting now is basically acting for the generation, for the people to come. So right now, we have been given a lot of funding, and we definitely will be given, but it's, like I said, we are not the only country with less than 1% emission. There are more than 100 countries that has less than 1% emission, and the entire continent of Africa is suffering. So what we should be thinking about, of course, we will get the money that we deserve, but we should be thinking about the resilience, adaptation plan, and a concrete policy for the climate change, because it's a bigger of a threat than any war or any terrorism. Not for just our existence, for the existence of the entire planet, but because we are like the top 10 countries which are more vulnerable and we are sitting with the highest number of glaciers outside the poles. So I think we should take it more seriously when it comes to adaptation and resilience and vulnerability of people than any other country.
Right, fair enough. Ji, Munisa, before I go to Ambassador Sahab.
Just want to contribute one thing, that the green initiatives that we had taken in the previous years were well noticed by the World Forums, and secondly, we have projected our recent climate disaster that we faced very well, and we are lobbying for $30 billion. And the World Bank has said that the estimates are about $40 billion. And our climate diplomacy in the recent months have been really great, and we have projected well. But the carbon trade sort of things, certainly it matters a lot for Pakistan. But the rational and optimal utilization of the resources that we get, that is also a very significant part of the initiatives that we take.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Jamil. Jamil Sahab, overall, in terms of the diplomacy that Munir Sahab is talking about in recent years, of course, we've, as far as the UNG is concerned, then the visit of Antonio Guterres, and further to that, the Prime Minister's address after the floods have happened, to keep it on the agenda is something that we've tried as far as the government is concerned. There has been a concentrated effort across the board to do that as far as what we call climate diplomacy is concerned. But again, when we talk about the clout of nations who are the largest emitters of carbon emissions overall, this is going to be an effort against that primarily. And when nearly 200 countries unite in a conference like this to talk about reparation, certainly it's a step forward. But again, the realities of the diplomatic realities at this time can't be ignored also. That's a factor. In your experience, I'm sure that you would agree.
Well, diplomacy is the name of consistency and continuity. Now, as I mentioned about the international law, which is the agreement, Paris agreement, the best thing is that the United States, which was reluctant in implementing the ingredients and the clauses of the Paris Accord, now they are on the table. And once they are on the table, the European Union, which is again the second biggest carbon emission region. So I think it's the kind of legwork that Pakistan had done for such advocacy and for such climate diplomacy. I think it's quite well recognized. And if I may quote the Secretary General statements from the benchmark, once he came to Pakistan, and he said humanity declared war on nature, and now nature is striking back, but it is blind, not striking back, who have contributed more to the war on nature than striking back to the wrong target. Now these are the sentences, these are the things which we are trying to, which Pakistan in its climate diplomacy is trying to capitalize on, and we should continue capitalizing it.
Ambassador, I want to talk about the efforts of the global north, that we have tried to make, the fact that, we've tried to resonate with them. And unfortunately, like you are saying, of course, the US may be on board, but overall there has been a lack of response, and one can't ignore that.
That's right, there has been a lack of response, and that's why the less developed countries who have no fault of theirs in terms of carbon emission, and they are being impacted and affected because of the faults and because of the deeds of these countries who are the biggest culprit in terms of carbon emission. Now, so what is the course available? What is the recourse available to the country like ours? Now, the recourse available is to do a full climate diplomacy, which is being done in Sharm el Sheikh by Prime Minister and his team. Now, as I said, that the legwork done this time was really quite reasonable and quite admirable legwork done, and that advocacy, that the climate justice, that's what the slogan is. And climate justice, it's not only us we are saying, it's the United Nations Secretary General who has been saying. United Nations Secretary General who is there, and Prime Minister is going to participate in that roundtable, where it's the early warning roundtable discussion with the Secretary General of the United Nations. Now, Pakistan has to do the advocacy, and I'm sure they are going to do it this time also. The Sustainable Development Goal, and one of the goals of the Sustainable Development is the environment and climate change. Pakistan is doing very well in that. By 2030, we should be able to achieve our targets and goals, and I am keeping a track on it. In fact, our other entities, government as well as the private entities, are collaborating in terms of sustainable development goal, and in terms of climate, and in terms of the carbon emission. Now,
I'll come back to Munisa. When we talk about the efforts Pakistan can make, whether across the board, our governments, all our governments, in place at this time, certainly, the way that it's been taken up again, I have to say, is unprecedented. But it's one of those climate damage as we have seen this time. The floods of 2009 were different. The floods of this time, the way that they've happened, the damage that they've happened have set us back by years. Rehabilitation is something that we are looking for. We are looking for funds from different countries. Those are also coming. But as far as what we can do, how much? Okay, let's try to put a percentage on it. How much? What we do, how much of it will make a difference? If we don't get the kind of help that we need from countries.
First of all, we shall appreciate Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif for his climate diplomacy and raising the issue of disaster very well. And despite all the efforts, the world community has not been mobilized as we were envisaging. And even the President Biden had to say that the world is not wake up, and they should come up and help Pakistan.
Again, the lack of response from the global north is something that has been concerning.
The other very important step is being taken by France. France government will be organizing a donor conference for Pakistan's disaster relief, reconstruction and rehabilitation. And that would be followed by the COP27. That is a major.
So when you talk about diplomacy, you mean more conferences, more
conference and consistency, as Ambassador Jamil said, that we need to keep the pace of diplomacy. It is the matter of consistency and urging very more vigorously. And these two more steps that needs to be taken. First, for the you said like global north, they have to take responsible or ask the oil and gas development companies, because they are the producers of fossil fuel, and they are contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions. There should be certain percentage compulsory for them to contribute to Green Climate Fund. And for example, in Pakistan, 52 oil and gas development companies are working in Pakistan, and they are producing billions of money out of it. And there should be certain percentage on their profits or on their revenue. They should contribute to such kind of initiatives. The fifth step that Pakistan can take is, and it can also be globally implemented, and that is so far a corporate social responsibility is a voluntary contribution, and the largest multinational companies, the producers of the consumer products, shall shall be, it shall be binding on that to contribute X amount of.
Let me go to Barrister Amar. Overall, as far as corporate social responsibility is concerned, are we at this time mandated, are companies at this time mandated to ensure that they follow? I mean, as I understand, there are some certain laws that are in place even at this time to ensure that, but are they followed through? Are we doing enough?
We have the environmental protection laws, we have the environmental protection agency on the federal level and the provincial agencies. You do have to get an environmental assessment done for certain projects, but I would say we need to follow up on this a lot more.
Okay. How active is the EPA? How active and how much? I mean, are we ensuring that those standards are being followed?
There needs to be incentive into this. It needs to be incentivized.
Okay.
It needs to be rewarded, and there should be repercussions if you go north, if you go south. I mean, sorry, because see. If we focus on international efforts, international diplomacy to secure funds and do nothing at home, change nothing at home, we're not going anywhere. We're not getting anything. I think we need to look at this at micro and macro levels. We need to go down to the local communities. We need to have them participate in this. We need to incentivize this thing.
As far as laws are concerned, because that would of course entail educating our people to a certain extent.
Why not? Get it into your schools. Put it in your curriculum. See, as I said, you have to get everyone on board, the provincial and the federal governments, the ministries, the environmental ministries, the education ministries. Why not put put this thing, which is going to affect you for centuries to come, in your national curriculum? Why not teach the kids? See, at every village level, you have an area which is more of a forest land. Why not have your school kids go and work on it? One plant for one kid. Why not? If you don't do these things, I don't think you're making any. Yes, you might secure funding, but what are you going to do with it?
What about laws? Are there sufficient laws in place at this time? Will there be amendments needed to ensure that there is compliance, to ensure that there is penalties?
Well, we need to work more on that. We need to have the climate change authority that we're supposed to make. We need to implement our laws, which we haven't.
So you're saying that implementation is needed, but the laws are in place?
Yes, I mean, of course, when we enact laws, there are world practice, best practice laws, we look all over the world for them. Definitely, the problem is not with the law, the problem is with the implementation. See, how many of us would know what EPA is? You ask the public, they probably wouldn't.
There's also, Abdullah, as far as, so basically it's also about the implementation of those laws, and also about the fact that it's not going to take precedence globally until it doesn't take precedence at home.
Yes, that's exactly my point every time I speak about it. And about the laws, we already have so many laws. For example, there shouldn't be any car with so much of the carbon emission, with that black smoke. The law is already there. But the point is the car is also on the road and nobody is finding the car, or there's a challan. So
we do have magistrates for that.
Yes, but the thing is implementation. That's what I'm saying. The law is there.
But my question is, I mean, as somebody, I feel, okay, what you're saying makes sense. But the point is, for a lot of people, there is certainly, we're dealing with literacy rates. We're dealing with how much importance it is how much of importance to the person, normal person, to the man on the street, and the fact that unfortunately, that's not. I mean, it's not very high on a list of priorities, and that also we have to work towards that.
I think whether you're educated or uneducated, everybody is just running for money and bread and butter. So when you're going to have a high fine, even if he's illiterate, he at least know that, okay, this is the thing, I don't want to do that because I'm going to have a really high fine.
So you're saying penalties?
Penalties.
Not educating, not the penalties.
No, but they're not just penalties. They should be rewarded. You need to incentivize it.
Of course, nobody's saying. But for example, if a person who's 40 years old or 45 years old, he's not going to school, he's not going to university, and he's not going anywhere to educate, he can only watch TV, we can do these programs if he listens. But if he doesn't listen, there's always the penalties. There's always these laws that must be there. For example, there's already a law, people shouldn't sit in the riverbed, but people are sitting there. So who's going to find that?
This is like a general, I mean, I think that then goes back to a general flouting of laws, or making sure that laws are followed.
Pakistan needs management and implementation. If we have these two things, so I think we can we are totally fine with it, and we can easily cope up with the climate change and the.
So basically, what needs to be done?
I would like to add to this. I just want to finish my.
Please.
IWMI conference, Integrated Water Resource Management Institute. They had a conference the entire week of Water Week in Pakistan. I think it was last week or the week before. And you know, the first thing they put up in the conference, there were like international scientists who came from Europe and everywhere, and they said the things that we advised to do after the 2010 floods haven't been done yet.
Okay.
So it was 1/3 of the country underwater at that time. Today, in 2022, again, okay, maybe we have climate change, of course not, maybe definitely more rainfall, but they said, where are the implementations that we have suggested already?
So implementation is
very important. Implementation is the major problem, Maruf, as I always speak of, and thank you, Abdullah is also mentioning it. First off, we need to amend the National Environment Act that was formed in 1997. And secondly, we always talk about penalties.
Minister, this is a long, of course, we are obviously, you know, implementation is something I think by and large we've all agreed everyone needs to work.
But penalties on the authorities as well.
Right. Let me. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I have to go to Jamil Sahab. Jamil Sahab, your quick comments before we close. Overall, how do you see this development, the Prime Minister's visit, and of course, you know, the fact that we are certainly on the right track with our climate diplomacy.
And we are indeed, you know, on the right track. In fact, this is one of the best diplomacy which I have seen. The way we have really started with it, and the way we are just taking it up at all the international forum. But let me tell you that there is always a room for improvement, but we are doing quite well in Pakistan, and that has been recognized by the United Nations, not only United Nations, but the planning division as well. Small components like Aga Khan University. Aga Khan University has now come up to the mark, and we are developing a model which is a zero emission with Prince Rahim, who is. So these kind of models can be emulated and further implemented. Implementation, of course, is a problem, but in South Asian countries, Pakistan is...
Thank you so much for being with us, Ambassador Saab. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us, Munir Ahmed Saab. Thank you for joining us, Pastor Amar Khushnood. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Jamil Khan. Thank you for being with us, Mohammed Abdullah Diol. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, as far as climate diplomacy is concerned, we've seen a concentrated effort as far as the government is concerned to put it on the map for Pakistan, the concept of preparation, the concept of trying to get the countries to own up, to have the global north react to the kind of damage that Pakistan has suffered. Further to the visit of Antonio Guterres, the UNGA address, there have been consistently followed our steps that have been taken by the Prime Minister, by the government, to try to further our goal of trying to achieve as far as redressal for the kind of damage that Pakistan suffers. It is consistently the point one of the agenda as far as the government is concerned. Let's hope that we can achieve all of that, and our efforts as a nation, the concentrated efforts that we've seen being made on a national level are rewarded. Thank you so much for joining us today.